Thank you. Juliana, I think we're going to see your name on a ballot somewhere soon, so thank you for the incredible introduction. You'll have to forgive me if it takes me a little while to get settled up here. You know, usually when I step up to a podium, no one ever cheers, and they certainly aren't happy to see me, so I have to say I like this a whole lot better. It is incredible to get to be part of such a special event and to see so many strong Christian conservatives coming together to celebrate our amazing country, and your willingness to be here over the course of the last couple of days and support so many people that are out there is truly humbling, and I'm honored that I get to be the last speaker. I think they were hard up for a closer, so you got stuck with me. I was hopeful that everyone could stay awake until this last segment, so hopefully we can have a little bit of fun this evening. You know, over the course of my time at the White House, I found myself in some pretty challenging places, probably some of the most difficult, most adversarial, most high-tense rooms you can possibly imagine. Probably none more so than one of the most historic days of President Trump's entire 4 years in office. He was getting ready to sit down with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. We had just gotten to Singapore. There were going to be 7 members of the U.S. delegation sitting across the table from 7 members of the North Korean delegation, part of the executive group of one of the most brutal dictatorships that's ever existed. I was one of the 7 that would represent the United States with the president, and as we were walking into the room, knowing that the entire world was literally watching to see how this meeting and this negotiation would unfold, I started to kind of take stock of the incredible thing that was taking place in front of me. And I looked to my left and to my right, and as I look to my left, I see the Secretary of State, who just happened to be first in his class at West Point. I see the Chief of Staff, who was a 4-star Marine general, the National Security Advisor, a couple of experts on North Korean and Asian affairs, the president, and me. It was very clear very quickly who the one in the group stood out. You know, when you're a kid and they give you those pictures and they ask you to find the one that's different, it was very obvious very fast who it was in that room. So I think, you know what, I'm gonna kind of loosen the tension a bit. I'm gonna set myself at ease. So I turned to my good friend Mike Pompeo to make a joke, and I said, "Hey, Mike, am I the only person here in the room that hasn't either killed someone or hasn't ordered somebody to be killed?" I laughed. He didn't. He looked at me, and he looked at the room, and he goes, "Yes, Sarah, you're the only one." I told him, I said, I saw that going differently. But it was a great reminder to be prepared for the challenges in front of us. You know, I didn't think there could be anything more difficult than a job and a career in politics. And then I had kids. And I found out very fast, politics is nothing. You know, one of the things I'm most proud of, I was only the 3rd woman to be the White House press secretary, but I was the very first mom to ever hold that job. And I'll be honest, I find that pretty shocking, because there was truly no greater preparation in the entire world for walking into that press briefing room than being a mom to preschool-aged children. Some of you will get that later. You see, my kids, when I started at the White House, were 5, 3, and 1. Let that sink in just a little bit. 5, 3, and 1. We did chaos at our house really well. In fact, I think I was one of the only people that went to the White House to get a break, because it was actually easier than being at home trying to help raise our 3 kids. But it was the perfect preparation. I knew that I needed an abundance of patience. I knew I was going to have to say no a lot. And I had to answer the same question over and over and over again. So being a mom set me up perfectly. It also keeps me humble. You know, having kids, they will certainly help keep your priorities in line, but they also keep you very humble. You know, if I travel around the country and I go to places like this where people stand up and cheer when I come into a room, for a minute I might think, hey, you know what? I'm not so bad after all. And then I go home. And my kids remind me very quickly I'm actually not that cool at all. Not too long ago, our oldest, my daughter Scarlett, she's 10 going on 25, she was getting ready for her first ever father-daughter dance. And it was a big deal at our house. She had clearly seen one too many princess movies because she had this perfect vision of what the night was going to look like. And it was my job to execute it flawlessly. So we spent the entire day picking out the perfect dress, getting her hair done, her nails, the whole 9 yards. And she didn't just want to go to the dance. She wanted the big reveal. She wanted to come down the stairs and her Prince Charming, my husband Brian, to be standing there waiting at the bottom with a very specific flower in hand. And so he was there and I was upstairs putting the finishing touches on our daughter. And I'm sharing this incredibly special mother-daughter moment where I'm telling Scarlett how proud we are of her, how thankful we are that God chose us to be her parents, how beautiful she is on the inside and the outside, and what an incredible night she has in front of her. And as I start to tell her this, I get emotional, as any normal mom might do. And as I'm choking up, my daughter reaches up and she pats my shoulder. She goes, "It's okay, Mommy. One day you can be pretty too." So my kids were a perfect preparation. The press has nothing on what they said about me. You know, I was talking to Juliana backstage, and she said, "I hope my introduction goes well." And I was thinking, you know, I've been called every name in the book. It can only be uphill from here. I was reminded growing up, my dad was governor for nearly 11 years in Arkansas. And so I went to a lot of political events. He's a phenomenal person. I'll pause for you to clap for him. I'm pretty biased, but there's nobody better in my book. But I spent a lot of time going to political events in my life. And one time as a kid, my dad got up to speak, and the guy went up to introduce him just ahead of him. And he said, "I've been told this man needs no introduction." And that's a good thing because I've never heard of him. So politics and parenting can create a thick skin. But more importantly, our kids can create a priority list that makes everything really simple, really fast. Because I know at the end of the day, and certainly my role at the White House, I knew that every single thing I did would have a direct impact on the life of my own kids. And that was not something that I took lightly, but frankly, it was something I cherished because I knew that we were standing up for things that mattered. I knew that we were fighting for values that our country was founded on. And I knew that things that we were fighting for, the things that I wanted my kids to understand and to know, were things that made America what it is today. One of the frustrations I have is there's so much talk about wanting our kids to understand the greatness of America, but we're doing a really terrible job teaching them just how incredible this country is. You know, growing up in a political family, I learned from a very early age how important it was to have good people engaged in public service. I learned very fast and put very simply, if we don't have good people, bad things happen. I was so proud of the fact that my parents were so willing to sacrifice of themselves to help serve. And I learned that because my parents took us with them everywhere. I have 2 older brothers. And I was literally in college before I knew it wasn't normal to spend your weekends and summers passing out brochures asking people to vote for your parents. Because they drug us with them all over the place. And at the time, I didn't have a great appreciation for it, but I do now. And I'm forever thankful for the lessons that they taught me, that they showed me firsthand. I got to see why it's so important that we have good people run for office. And so when I got engaged in public service, my husband Brian and I decided to try to do the same thing. So we take our kids with us as much as possible. My kids are now 10, 8, and 7, so slightly better than that 5, 3, and 1 years of the White House. But I learned very quickly, at the White House, taking all 3 of my kids to anything would likely end in me losing my job at the end of whatever event that was. So I put them on a rotation. I started taking them one at a time. One particular turn, it's my son Huck's turn to go with me. He's my middle child. And honestly, when you name a kid Huck, you kind of set a certain expectation for him in life. And I'm sad to say he has lived up to it every minute of every day. And so I debated, this was going to be a big deal, a big event, and I debated whether or not Huck could handle it. He was about 4 at the time, and Brian and I talked about it. We decided he may never get a chance like this again. So I was going to take Huck, and if at any point it got a little too out of control, I'd simply call Brian, he'd pick Huck up, my job would be saved. So off we went. This was called Bring Your Kid to Work Day. It meant Huck had to make it through an entire work day at the White House. There were a lot of days I wasn't sure I'd make it through an entire work day at the White House. But off we went. He had on a little bow tie and a blazer. He was absolutely perfect. I took about 10,000 pictures before 9 o'clock in the morning. What I didn't realize is the most memorable moment of the day would come at the very end. See, kind of the culmination of events for all of the kids is to gather in the Rose Garden. The president and the vice president, they come out and they greet the kids and welcome them to the White House, take pictures. So Huck runs off with all of the other kids. As a staff, we had decided to invite the press's kids to participate as well. So I would go into the Oval Office and I'm briefing the president. I'm reminding him that half of the kids out there, their parents are reporters, and he might want to watch what he says. That was basically the response he gave me too. And as I'm talking to the president, we notice that the bushes in the Rose Garden start to violently shake. I thought, well, that was strange. About the time I realized what's happening, this little blonde head jumps up out of the bushes and runs full speed directly to the window of the Oval Office and presses his face completely up against the glass. I don't know how many of you have seen a 4-year-old face smashed against glass, but I can assure you it's a sight to behold. The president, clearly unfamiliar with the scene unfolding, jumps back. Oh my gosh, Sarah, there is some little boy looking into the Oval Office. I said, yes, sir, that's my son Huck. And he just shook his head and goes, well, Sarah, at least he's handsome. Not much to say there. I thought that would be the end, but unfortunately it wasn't. The president walks out of the Oval Office and all of the kids are cheering and excited to see him. And here comes that same little blonde-headed boy, this time running full speed directly at the President of the United States. The president, being gracious, sort of crouches down like he's going to pick Huck up. And right before he gets to the president, and right before I'm pretty sure Secret Service was going to intervene and take him down, Huck sidesteps the president, completely ignoring him in front of the entire crowd, runs right past him, full speed, and jumps directly into my arms. Pretty sweet. The president turns around and he goes, are you kidding me, this kid again? I kind of shrugged my shoulders, and I had nothing to say. I was totally speechless, and I walk off, and I start to explain to Huck how there are certain rules that we have to follow. There are certain things that he has to do if he wants to get to keep coming to events with his mom. When I realized that Huck shouldn't be in trouble at all. Because for every other kid out there, the only person that mattered to them was the president. But for my 4-year-old son, the only thing in the world that mattered to him was his mom. And that is a pretty remarkable thing. One of the reasons it's so important that we have good people engaged in public service is because we want to make sure that the path in front of my kids, the path in front of your kids, the path in front of your grandkids is free and clear so that they can run full speed just like Huck towards whatever it is that they want. That is the beauty of America. It doesn't matter where you start. You get to decide where you will finish. Unfortunately, we have people who have forgotten that, who have forgotten the greatness of America. the beauty of living the American dream. In fact, we have people not only that want to put hurdles in front of our kids' paths, frankly, they want to rip them up so that they don't even exist. And I refuse to sit back and do nothing and allow it to happen. It's my kids' future, and the future of every kid in America is far too important for us not to engage at every level. We have to make sure that we have strong Christian conservatives engaged in making sure we have good leadership. If we want to make sure that our kids are actually being educated, not indoctrinated, if we want to make sure that we're actually empowering parents, not government bureaucrats, if we want to make sure we're preparing kids for the workforce, not a lifetime of government dependency, and we want to make sure that the most vulnerable among us are protected at every stage of life. So often in the pro-life conversation, we only talk about the womb. Let me be very clear. The reason that we have to talk about it all is because every stage of life has value. From every moment, starting at conception, to the classroom, to the workplace, to the nursing home, to the end of its natural conclusion, every value has life. That's what sets us apart. And we have to do everything we can to protect it. I absolutely love this country, and I want my kids to love it too. But frankly, if we don't start doing a better job teaching our kids just how amazing America is, they are not going to inherit the same America that most of us grew up in. If you don't hear anything else I say tonight, I hope that you will hear this. America is the greatest country that the world has ever known. And never forget why. America's the greatest country in the world because we're the freest country in the world. And if we lose that, we lose the very core, the very essence of what makes us so special. We have to make sure that we're willing to stand up and fight for that freedom, to do our part in the fight for freedom. Over the course of the 2.5 years that I spent at the White House, I had the opportunity to travel with the president on every foreign trip he took during that time, going to nearly 30 different countries. Every single place we went, I was reminded of what an incredible place this is. And what an incredible blessing it is to wake up every single day and call myself an American. One particular trip was unlike anything I've ever done before and probably ever will do again. It was December 25th of 2018. It was Christmas night. And we had literally just picked up wrapping paper that was shoved into practically every corner of our house when I had to walk out on my own family's Christmas, unable to tell them where I was going that night, because the place I'd be traveling to with the president was so dangerous they didn't want anybody in the world to know that he'd be on the ground even for a few hours. Yet we have men and women who live there, serving, sacrificing, missing every holiday with their family. We boarded Air Force One in a way none of us had ever done before, in total darkness. There were no lights on the plane. There were no lights on the runway. The shades were pulled down, our cell phones were turned in, we were going completely off the grid. And 15 hours later, when we landed in the war-torn part of Western Iraq, it was a similar scene. No lights on the plane, no lights on the runway. The only light you could see was coming from a glimmer about a mile away from where we had touched down. A dining hall packed with hundreds of troops who had absolutely no idea that the president and first lady were going to come into that dining hall. And when they did, a sight and a scene and a sound that I hope I never forget unfolded. You had men and women from every part of the country, every political party, every race, every religion, every demographic you can imagine represented in that room in that moment. But in one perfect voice, in complete and total unity, they shouted over and over and over again, USA, USA, USA. It was an absolutely perfect picture of what makes America so incredible. Men and women from every place you can imagine, putting everything on the line, willing to give it all up so that you and I can live free in the greatest country the world has ever known. As the president started to make his way around that room, stopping at each of the tables, thanking the troops individually, one of the young soldiers yelled from the back. He said, "Mr. President," he said, "I re-enlisted in the military because of you." And the president said, "And son, I'm here because of you." It was a remarkable exchange. Two people serving in completely different capacities, but in that moment fully committed to doing everything they could in the fight for freedom, in the fight for the greatness of America. As the president continued making his way around, stopping at tables, that young soldier came up to me. He said, "Sarah," he said, "you have a tough job." I thought, "Are you kidding? I take questions. You take bombs and bullets." I told him, I said, "What I do is nothing." And in a moment that I will cherish for the rest of my life, he reached up and he pulled the Brave Rifles patch that he wore on his shoulder. He placed it into my hand. He said, "Sarah, we are in this together." Ladies and gentlemen, that's who we are as a country. That young man represents the very best of who we are. And everyone that serves alongside him, all of those who have come before him, and the thousands that we know that will be called upon to come after him, deserve to know that they have a country and a community of people back home that are doing their part in the fight for freedom. Frankly, doesn't mean we're all called to serve on the physical battlefields of Iraq. Doesn't mean we're all called to run for office. But you do have a part to play. Each of us have a role in making sure that the greatness of America is preserved, is protected, and that we have the ability to pass it on to the next generation. We have a moral obligation to do a better job by the kids that are growing up in this country. We can and we must do better to save our great republic. I hope that after 2 days of sitting here listening to great speakers and being inspired and energized, I hope that you don't just leave here thinking that was great, that was fun. I got some really neat pictures. But you're reminded that you have a part to play, that you're reminded that you have to get out and engage in the process. If you're not willing to put your name on the ballot, get behind those that are. Make sure that you are actually doing your part. No candidate for office ever wins on their own. And frankly, if they tell you that they did, throw them out, because you don't want them there. It means they don't understand the sacrifice of those who carried them across the finish line. I can assure you there are a lot of great people out there that are putting their name on the line so that you don't have to. I hope that you will engage in the process. I hope that you will help them, because we are at our best as a country when we do exactly what that young soldier said, when we're in it together. Let's go out and remind the world why America's the greatest country they've ever known. Thank you so much for letting me be here. God bless you. God bless our great country. Appreciate it. Thank you.